Hello geeks and gamers, Matt Lemke here with your gamer goggles, gamer-goggles.com. And today we're going to talk briefly about where I've been for the last 2 weeks, and then we're going to move into starting our chats, my chat with you about developing character and why it's actually become important to me. These little sessions aren't going to be more than 10 or 15 minutes, but let's get back into why and where I've been. 2 weeks ago I had one of these little Matt Talks RPG, which is probably not going to stay the title. It's just something I want to do to stay current with my YouTube channel and with you, my fans. But since then, I've had quite a bit of computer problems. So I've been focusing on trying to get that done. I also got a new job, so I've been training. And my children made the playoffs, which they're now done with. They didn't get very far. Well, they got 2 weeks in. I guess that's good. When I was playing football, the team that was my high school, Highland High School, we never made the playoffs. So I really don't know if it's good or bad to get 2 games in and then be done. But with that said, 2 weeks ago I talked about metagaming. And in the course of metagaming, I said the next thing we were going to talk about is developing character. Well, that's actually since inspired me to go ahead and start writing and sharing my experience as a writer, which is really what I want to do at this point in my life. I want to publish books and novels and adventures and things of that nature. And one of the things in the course of becoming a writer has been becoming involved with some authors like Mike Stackpole, Mark Tassin, John Helfers, who is an editor and an author, through things like the Writer Symposium at Gen Con. And one of the things that has become fundamental to me is, well, gaming has become a lot more important to me as an individual who wants to write, because it helps become creative. So has reading, which I still struggle to do. I find myself reading a lot of dry texts, like the Rifts Coalition War Campaign. I mean, which in and of themselves, they're not dry, but they're not like reading a novel. You know what I mean? Or, you know, I'm going back through a lot of my D&D books, like the Savage Species book, or some of the newer books, like Horde of the Dragon Queen for D&D 5th Ed. Before I forget, I'm going to introduce to you Kellen Colt, the Street Deacon, and Midnight, which we might actually use them today. I really don't know. Well, like I said, I've been inspired to start writing my experience based off of information from reading a couple of different books, one of which was a textbook I picked up at, of all places, Goodwill. Another, other things are things like Mike Stackpole's 21 Days to a Novel, and the drill that he gives you on fulfilling a novel and getting to the point where you have basically an outline and you're ready to write your novel. And how that can be applied to role-playing. I've been in the same game group now. Well, I've been playing with the same group of players since about 2001 when I opened my game store for as far as role-playing games goes. This particular adventure that we're in has been going for almost 3 years now. And this particular storyline has been a storyline of this GM's for almost 15 years. And all these different playing adventure groups and things get intertwined into it. I started role-playing, when I was about 10 years old. I actually started around 1986 with Dungeons and Dragons, which is only important in the sense that when I was that young, I didn't role play the same way I play now. Over time, I've graduated on many different levels and began to play different things, and I use everything that goes into a character as a tool to define an individual. Now, with that said, we're going to back way up. I started writing an article that's going to be released over the next, I don't know, maybe until the first of the year. Depends on whether or not this goes live today or not. The first part of this is going to coincide with my article, so if you like what I have to say here, please go and read my article, which will either be up tonight or next Thursday. So what does it mean to create a character? For most of us in role-playing games, creating a character is you grab a fistful of dice, you roll some dice, you determine what those abilities are going to be, where they're going to get plugged in, or you use a point buy system depending on what your group does. And then you either pick a race or a class, followed by equipment and things of that nature. And in some systems you pick an alignment. And you're pretty much done with your character at that point in time, until you've played an adventure or two. That's if you're starting, off at first level. So we're going to take a look today at those key concepts before we move on, because there is a lot beyond that you can do to make your character much more realistic. And in the last 3 years, I wouldn't say I'm an expert at it, but I've become a lot better at it, and I've helped a lot of people enrich their role-playing experience. And when you enrich your role-playing experience, you're going to enrich those people around you. And we'll get into that, I don't know, maybe in a few weeks. So, let's look at what is probably the most obvious. The first thing almost everybody does is they roll their stats. This is a physical representation of your character. It's also a little bit, you can say a lot of different things with different levels of intelligence and wisdom as well. If you have a character with a high intelligence, you are probably only an average individual, so it's going to be a little bit of a challenge for you to play a character with an 18 intelligence. And that's why that's assuming we're playing Dungeons and Dragons. Obviously, you have to, it's going to be different from game system to game system. But what's important is that you don't even realize it, and you have already started creating a character outside of what your chosen role might be within the party. You have created strength, depending on the game, you might have, personal beauty and what an idea of what your character looks like. Now this is a layer. This is the very bottom layer. Almost everybody rolls or picks their stats first. If you're using a point buy system, you may come and sit down at the table and say, I'm ready to build a ranger, or I'm ready to build a warrior, and that's fine. That's your first layer. And then you plug in your abilities and your skills and your attributes and your race. So if you sat down and you picked your class first, if it's a system that uses a class, you have an idea of what your role is. The fighters, they generally deal out the damage and take damage, while things like clerics or healers will be, they do the buffing of the party. Spellcasters, well, they obviously cast spells at low levels. They're generally a little weak. In a spy espionage setting, there's different roles to fill, like, okay, this guy's the tinkerer. He builds the little, he fixes our vehicles, and he drums them up, and he's a little bit of a support guy. So you either have, a damage dealing role or a support role, to dumb it down to the two most basic of roles within a party. You fit one of those two groups. You have a skillmonger. In my opinion, a skillmonger is a support role. They do a lot of things. The fighter or the warrior, they get into combat and they deal a lot of damage, and outside of combat, they don't have a lot to do. Bam. That's exactly where I'm going with this. What do you do to balance your game within your party so that you're always having fun? That is key to what we're discussing. A fighter in Dungeons and Dragons, and even in Pathfinder, and in almost every game system, they excel at being unstoppable in combat. Now, there's arguments, of course, where a fighter will never compare to certain types of mages and things in classic fantasy games. That's not what this is about. This isn't about doing that. This is about taking what you have chosen to play and elevating it to the point where that doesn't come into an argument of, your fighter might not be able to deal with the Magi, or the Magi is so much better. This is to eliminate that so that you have fun filling the role of the character while playing a person. And that's where we're going. So, now we have two things done and accomplished. We have rolled our stats and chosen our class. Those are the first two layers. The next layer is race. And race is actually pretty important because it helps you decide and determine a certain outlook and demeanor, especially if you're going to play stereotypical guys. Like, you know, a dwarf, stereotypically, they're stubborn. They're stubborn, they're short, they're stocky, they live underground, and they do things, you know, they have like stone skills and stone cutting and things of that nature. They just do it. Elves, they're generally snobs, in, you know, traditionally speaking. Or they're a little too intelligent or too wise as a race because they've lived so long. So they kind of frown upon the maturity levels of other races. How do you play that? How do you do that in a party without constantly offending them? Or should you be constantly offending them and be disliked, have that as a dislikable trait in your character, in your personality? Those are things that we're going to start to get at. The next thing that isn't in every game system, you know, and sometimes it's called a philosophy, sometimes it's called an alignment, sometimes it's called a demeanor. Sometimes it's not even used, but I'm going to argue that alignment and things of that nature are an important choice to make. Even if they're not in the game, you should create something, a guideline for this individual that you're creating within a story that this whole group is telling. There's no reason why in a game that you should randomly be able to walk up to somebody and kill them and not have moral consequences. We do in real life. Or you've been fighting this guy. Is it okay for a character who doesn't have a code just to kill the guy? Or should the character have a code? These are the type of questions that we are eventually going to get to. And the last thing we're going to get to is actually developing the personality. And hopefully I'm intelligent enough that I can teach you and break it down in a manner that your personality, along with your race, your choices of skill, your choice in alignment or demeanor or philosophy, will help you struggle with creating a character that struggles with choices in game. For example, we're playing an Eberron game right now, and we have disabled a character. We have disabled a Warforged that is giant-sized. He's about 12 feet tall. And he's been disabled now for a couple of weeks. He's been laying on the deck of our ship. And none of us have really dealt with the question of what to do with him. He's been laying there. He's disabled, not destroyed. So technically he's unconscious. He's effectively in a coma. And the moral question is, now that we're in a place where we can deal with him and give him over to the authorities, what do we do with him? And it hasn't been brought up to the party yet. And it needs to be because, well, we're a party of good people. And so we're probably going to have an interesting discussion. We've already had discussions where one individual wants to melt him down and steal his adamantium and use it to make arms and armor. I'm glad that I've already spoken out against that, personally, because that would be murder. He's unconscious or in a coma, effectively, until, well, one of us heals him, basically, or does mild repair. He is a war criminal, I think. We're not sure yet. We do know that he is not happy with us and wants to kill us all, and he was hired to kill us. So we have to be very careful with what we do to him and how we handle the situation. And those are the types of things based off of your personality, your character's upbringing, your character's race, your view on life and death that you create for this individual. And yes, I did say individual. Your character should be more than a piece of paper to you. It should be something that you care and nurture for, kind of like a pet. I'm not saying that you should make this individual, character come to life and be something you talk to. That would be a little weird. But it is something that you're creating, so when your character gets injured or gets dissed, you should feel a little something because it's your work. And that's pretty much where I wanted to go with this. I hope that wasn't too much rambling, and we did cover a lot of ground as to where I want to go. Oh, the other thing that we didn't cover is, well, let's see here. We got these two guys. We have the straight deacon, who is a preacher type of character, we'll say, and we have Midnight, who is an espionage type of character. Other things that can come into play are gender. What if she was the preacher type of character and he was the spy type of character, and how do those things affect the society? Another thing you could look at is, when you get into things like alignment, is it okay for a lawful good character to go out and get drunk intentionally? Or should they morally think otherwise? Those are the things that we're going to talk about and try and use to hopefully make your game a more enriched game. And I've already gone 16 minutes, so we're going to stop here. Next week, we're going to start with the basic, and we're going to talk, I don't know if it's all going to be about role, but we're going to talk about the first couple of layers of developing your character, and that is going to be your abilities. It's going to be the role your character fills within your party, and we're going to try and keep this generic so you can apply it to any game system. And then we're going to talk about race, if there's the potential for race. And actually there is potential for race, even if you're playing in a modern world where there are no other races. You can look at, it's all in how you apply it. You can apply color as a type of race, because within our society we know that people who live in different subgroups get raised differently. And that's something that we can discuss intelligently and apply it to our games. You can even do that within Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder. You might have one subculture of high elves that was ostracized, and they're going to have different social norms than the rest of them. So I appreciate your guys' time. Let me know if that wasn't enough information for you. We're 17 minutes in. Please stop back next week. Check my blog, gamer-goggles.com, and there should be an article up on role-playing, something like the role of character or making better character, or something like that. I haven't titled it yet. I've been working on it for a couple of weeks now because I've had so many computer problems. Again, thanks for watching. Matt Lemke with Through Gamer Goggles, gamer-goggles.com. Oh, and by the way, Gen Con is not that far away. Registration starts in about a month. And I'm going to have some exciting things to talk to you about for Gen Con. Peace.